Good afternoon, boys and girls. Welcome to today's lesson. I'm glad to see you guys were all on time. Thank you very much. For those of you who haven't already done so, please join the Lichess study. Otherwise, if you're having difficulty doing that, then you can always just follow on the Zoom. I will be sharing the screen as per usual. All right. Welcome to today. Guys, I hope you've been practicing hard. Very important to keep the chess brain ticking over. Lichess is a good option to do that. Or, of course, I've mentioned it before, if you'd like to try another platform or another website, chess.com is also a very, very nice one for you guys to give a shot if you want to just try something else, just for interest's sake. All right, so here we are. We're going to do a little bit of our usual. We're going to get warmed up with a few maiden ones. And from there, we'll move on to some middle game attacking. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get through all of it, but I decided we'll put on a bit more, and that way we'll see how it goes. If we're running short of time, we can always finish it up at a later stage, or I can always make a video for you guys, something like that. All right, so without further ado, let's get into this. White to play maiden one. As usual, guys, I'm encouraging participation. Please get involved. And you can either type in the Lichess chat room or on the Zoom chat, as we've mentioned many times before. Let's rock and roll. It's white to play maiden one. Let's go. Rico gets us started with some gold. That's very, very nice from the young man. Rook takes h7, and that's a mate. Let me just adjust this a little bit. Okay, cool. Rook takes h7 mate. Now, guys, just to give you a little bit of let's say feedback regarding what you got to be looking out for. I always look out for the first thing: can they take my piece? I mean, that's the most important sort of concern. If I somehow miscalculated and it's not mate, okay, it's not the end of the world. As long as I'm not losing some material like a rook or a queen or a bishop or whatever the case might be. Obviously, I don't want to lose any material. So most important thing, just make sure that they can't take you. And then you can, of course, look at the other options. Can they block? Can they take? Can they move? All right, lovely. That was sharp. That was quick. Very good. Let's move. I think for the other ones, what we'll do is we'll also do the defensive option. I think it works well. We've got to, not only do we have to identify the mate, but we also have to figure out how to defend against the mate. I think that's very, very important. Rook h6. That's too easy for Rico. That's a true story. Rook h6 is mate. Nicely done, young man. Let's take a look at it. So Rook h6, it covers all your bases. Can they take me? No. Can they block? No. Can they move out of the way? No. This king has been mated. He's stuck. And that's the ball game. That's going to be the mate. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we'll flip it around. Actually, I'm not. In theory, we're going to flip it around. We're going to say it's black to move. Okay, so what I can do to make that more realistic is I can just sort of make a nothing move for white, king g2. Now, let's say it's black to play. What are we going to play to prevent rook h6? Okay, so now it's black's move, and we've got to put ourselves in our opponent's shoes. This is good practice for that, and this allows us to sort of say to ourselves, okay, how do I prevent that threat? What can black play now that we know what white wants to do? So it's not unstoppable by any stretch. Black's got a couple good resources available. Knight f5. I like knight f5. Let's talk about knight f5. So knight f5 at first glance, thank you for that answer. Knight f5 does hold the h6 square. So I mean, in theory, it's good. There's a couple problems with the move though, although it kind of works out, but I'm not sure if we saw why. So the key point here is that it's check. That's called a discovered check. So I'm kind of moving one piece and I'm opening up the line of another piece to create a check. So that's an example of a discovered check. It's something we've touched on in a few examples, not necessarily we've like studied it in great detail, but it's something that you guys are familiar with. And whenever I do see a potential for a discovered check, what I always do is I look where I can move this knight, where I can do some damage, where I can actually, like I'll look for the opponent's queen immediately. I'm like, where's the queen? Where's the queen? Where can I go with this knight? Because I'm kind of getting in a free move. Wherever I move, if I move knight here or knight here, for instance, they can't take me. I get a free move because it's check. So I have to deal with the check, whatever they do. Obviously, there's many options in to escape the check. And then I get another move with the knight. So that makes me think about things like, okay, so how can I attack the rook? Where can I move this knight where I could potentially attack the rook? Because I know, like I already said, we get a free move. So I move the knight somewhere, then they have to move out of the check. And then I get the second move with the knight, and hopefully able to pick up the rook there. So, and those two moves are knight h5 and knight e8. Both of those moves win me this rook. Let's look at it in a little bit more detail. So knight h5, what's the key points? The key points again is that it's check and that you have to get out of the check. You can block the check, but it's not very successful, of course. Black will just take the rook. So if white then again, simple stuff, gets out of the check, black's going to take the rook. And then it's just, you know, pretty plain and simple victory here for the black pieces. I would recommend you just use the king and the rook and go about your business. Checkmating the king with the, checkmating, yeah, the white king with the king and a rook. If you're a little bit unsure on how to do that, it's not something that we've done a lot of. I have made a video on checkmating the king with the king and a rook. If you feel like upping your game a little bit, please go and check that one out. And then, of course, just like anything that you learn, you want to practice it. You know, if I teach you something, a new concept, something that you haven't quite mastered, the best way is to take that new information and go and practice it on a board. Maybe you've got a board at home. Alternatively, you can use one of the platforms online. They do have like an analysis board. I think it's under the tools. There we go. So you go analysis board and you can sort of play the moves out there. There's also a place for a board editor where you can sort of set up a position. And then, of course, you can create studies, many options when it comes to just elite chess on its own. Okay, so that's cool. A little bit more detail than perhaps necessary. Let's just stop it there. Just the other one is to prevent rook h6 is king h7. Which just simply stops the rook from mating us. So guys, always important to identify the threat, figure out what's the threat, and then that way you're gonna have a much better chance of stopping the attack or stopping the threat. White to play, mate in one, let's rock and roll. All possible checks, all possible takes. Look at that board, scour that board. Where are we gonna mate this king? Okay, I haven't seen any solutions just yet. Come on, guys, look for all possible checks, all possible takes. That's a clue. One of those is going to be your correct answer. Queen d7, sharp. Very, very sharp. Very nice. Queen takes d7. Okay, just, you see, as you see it here, queen takes d7. I'll type it into the Lichess chat. So Q for queen takes. Don't forget this X or multiplication sign to symbolize taking or capturing a chess piece. So queen takes, and then the square d7. And then if it's check, you're going to put a plus. Oh, that's an equal. If it's mate, you're going to put a hashtag. So queen takes d7 mate. And you can see that, okay, I mean, the only difference is in the Lichess notation is they put a little symbol for the queen. Same story with all the pieces, really. But you know that it's Q for queen, R for rook, B for bishop, N for knight. Okay, these are things that you guys know. K for king. I almost forgot about the king there for a second. All right, the other one, I'll admit, the first thing I think about is just going rook takes rook, because I realize the rook defends the bishop. Well, at least that's the way it looks. So I'm thinking of, let me remove the defender first. So rook takes, king takes, and then you go queen takes d7, which equals mate. So that's just the first sort of idea that pops into my mind. But notice that this rook is actually pinned, so but he cannot move off of this 8th rank. So that would be moving himself into check. So this is why queen d7 straight away is actually mate. The king unable to take because the rook is defending, so that one's covered. And then again, like I said, that's the most important thing to make sure of. Because you don't want to be losing a queen. That would just backfire terribly, and it's the last thing we want. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's take a step back and just say to ourselves, okay, fine, we see all of this. What do we do as black to prevent this upcoming threat? So we've got this threat, which is very scary. We've got this threat followed by this threat. Oof, it's looking terribly scary if I've got the black pieces. But black has an amazing defensive resource here. I'll give you guys 30 seconds, see if you guys can come up with a black to play. Let's do the usual. We'll do like a, let's do this. And nothing move, just so that I can move the black pieces. Otherwise, it won't let me do that. So black to play, find a defense to stop white from mating you. Rook takes rook check. Well, that's a hash, actually. That's mate. Rook takes rook mate. Nice solution there, Rico. Thank you. Let's just, it's not rook takes rook. Let's stick to the squares. So this rook would be on g8. So I'd say rook takes g8. And that is the golden move. Well played, young man. Then that's check. Okay, so rook takes g8 check. And then, okay, so now the white king has to get out of the check wherever he chooses to go. Let's choose f2, seems like a good option. Either one of these, I don't think it would have made a tremendous difference. And so what happens, I pick up this rook for free. I still have to deal with this issue though, but maybe now I can just move the bishop. I think that's fine. There's no queen d8. Alternatively, I can also just go back and defend. There's no more pin here. So now if you want to take my bishop, I would be very happy to just take you back. And then I think black's plan will be quite simple. It's march this pawn down the board and hopefully promote and cause a little bit of trouble there. All right, very, very nice. Very nice. So rook takes rook, well solved, well solved. And a nice, easy one to finish it off before we get into some middle game attacking. White to play mate in one. Let's go. So remember the piece and then the square and then the mate at the end there. That's how we want to do it. Looks like white's in a bit of trouble here. It's kind of queen against rook. So he needed to do something special. I see they've given you the queen as a distraction. Come on, take the queen. Okay, what we got here? Knight g7, brilliant stuff. Knight g7 is mate. So it's check, and the king can't, excuse me for that one. The rook covers the 7th rank, so the king can't come up. And that is the ball game. Checkmate in 1 achieved. So like we said, the queen was more of a distraction than anything else. Of course, if you take the queen, black's going to take back. King and knight against king and rook is, I think it's lost. White should win this game, but it's going to require some good play and maybe a mistake from your opponent. So it's going to be quite tricky. I think it's white's very happy that he's got the king trapped already. So I mean, even in the situation like if the king comes here, I can just keep my my rook on the 7th. And cause him, make it difficult. I mean, I'd love to play this move at the right time. I think black has this, and you see now the knight starts to escape, and which means we've got a long game ahead of us. Got to try and trap that knight and then mate the king. Still very, very difficult. So of course, don't just jump at the first good move you see. Emanuel Lasker taught us this roughly 100 years ago. He was the world champion at that stage, and he said, when you see a good move, look for a better one. And that's been a famous quote of his, and as we've known now is, gone on for a century. Fantastic. Let's flip it on its head like we've been doing. Let's say we'll just make this move for white, and let's now say it's black to play. Give me a good move for black. This one, wow, it looks like there's lots of good moves for black. It's not exactly a good position for white if it's black's move. Easy moves. Somebody give me something. So black to play, we're looking for a nice move to prevent the mate threats and just the threats in general. What would you play if you were black? Was about to move on there. Knight takes e6, sneaks in. Very, very good move. Nicely done. So knight takes e6 is the correct move. That's a free knight. Who doesn't want a free knight? You want to be greedy on the chessboard, guys. Greed is good in the game of chess, and that's a nice move. Look, there's a couple other nice moves. I mean, a free knight's a free knight, so it's very difficult to dispute that. But okay, there's queen check, which is also pretty much the same thing. Then maybe the next move, I'll just grab this knight. I don't think anybody would fault you for coming queen check, just causing the opponent's king a little bit of trouble. Remember, guys, a check on its own doesn't really do much, but my plan is more to get the king or to force the king to some light squares. And if I can force the king to some light squares, perhaps I can win the rook, which is a little bit more valuable. So once I can pick off this rook, then it'll be a very quick and easy game for black. Because now let's say the king just moves back. I scoop up the rook. And now all black needs to do is trade off these knights. So, I mean, knight takes knight would just be a terrible move for white. Because he's just making life so easy for black. Now it's king and queen, which will be a very simple route to victory. This is the L-shaped method, something that we've done many times and something that I don't think any one of you should have any difficulty doing. Okay, excellent. Congrats and well done. That was well solved. Good work. Let's move on. Okie dokie. So now, okay. So there are tactics in this position, like winning combinations, and sort of very much similar to the maiden ones that we've done, or maiden two, or something to that effect. But the reason I actually have put these together for you guys is that I want to just talk about sort of ideas and the way you should be thinking and what you're trying to look out for. You know, just the same like what we've talked about in the maiden ones, where you're looking at all the possible checks. Where could the king potentially escape to? Those are the things that you want to look at when you're trying to mate the king. Now, there's other things you want to look at. Well, in a lot of cases, very similar things you want to look at when you're on the attack. So now we're going to discuss a little bit of middle game attacking here. Okay, first thing I like to do in any one of these positions, especially when I'm analyzing, is just have a good look and see who's winning and by how much. So that's a very good point of reference just to have a look at whenever you're, you know, just having a look at a chess game. So it looks to me like white just has an extra rook here, which is quite, it's like, shouldn't black have a rook here? Yes, he should. Probably what's happened is white snuck the knight in here, managed to grab the rook, and now is coming back out with the knight, which has wasted him a little bit of time. We can also see black's gobbled this pawn up on g2, and the queen is putting a little bit of pressure on this king, a little bit menacing. So what would I look at if I'm sitting in this position with black to play? How would I go about trying to attack the opponent's king? Well, again, like we said, we look at all possible checks. I definitely have a good look at that. Probably look first at the queen and say, this check's no good. These checks are no good. Okay, so that was pretty quick. I mean, the checks there weren't really eventful. We didn't get really anything. In fact, we didn't get any options at all really there. So then we look at all possible takes. Fine. What can I take here? I can take this, which is okay. I mean, should I take this? Woo, probably not. Knight takes c2 looks pretty good, actually. If, and I say if, this knight wasn't here. Knight b2, did I read that correctly? Knight b2. So, yeah, I think he's probably talking about knight c2, which is interesting. But like I said, its problem is this knight here. So if I could vanish this a3 knight, or if this knight wasn't here, the knight takes c2 would be very powerful. For instance, they just make a nothing move like a6 just so I can move the white knight. And then knight takes c2, because now it's check. All these squares are covered. In fact, we had a very similar example in one of the maiden ones. Excuse me. But now white can and has to take. He's forced to take the knight, and then we just take the queen. Okay, and I think this will be enough of an advantage for black to probably go on and win this game without too much difficulty. Okay, so this, but unfortunately, you know, like we've said, the knight is here, so that's not really going to work. Moves that I might give a try is stuff like d3 or e3, because those pawns start looking very, very menacing as they get further up the board. d3 seems like a good move. The problem that I have with d3 is not clear what I'm actually threatening to do. You know, maybe I can take this, but that doesn't feel that that strong or that good. If they take me, then I've got a great reply in knight takes, which is then attacking the king. And then it's very much similar to the previous example we had, where now the white queen is forced to take on d3. So queen d3, e d3. And okay, it's obviously unpleasant for white. What else can we try here? So d3 looks pretty strong. I definitely think it's a bit better than e3. e3, you're looking at these squares, but these squares are defended by the queen and the rook. So those squares are not that promising. We're giving sort of white an opportunity to defend. I would probably play something like queen e2 if I was white here. Why? Because he's winning on points or material. So he wants to trade off the pieces. A trade of queens here would be probably the best possible news white could have, because now there's no big queen to checkmate the king. So it's like there's no queen around these parts to sort of give this king any trouble. So, you know, that solves that issue. Okay, so that's just some ideas that you guys need to be looking at. And of course, if you were playing black, you wouldn't want to swap off the pieces. So you'd be doing everything in your power, everything that you possibly could, to ensure that you don't just trade off the queens and trade off pieces, because then you know you're headed down a losing path. Again, pawn takes pawn, queen takes pawn. Just feels like, again, white wants to trade off the queens. If queen takes, rook takes. And of course, that's very much in white's favor. Black not interested in doing that at all. No reason to do that. So, and now we'll move on to the tactic that is so powerful in this position, and that is just knight d3 check. So this is now a little bit confusing, or let's say difficult for our level now. But I think we can just watch this and just enjoy. So if queen takes knight, then pawn takes. Obviously, that's no good. The real move we need to be concerned with is this one, absolutely. Now, C takes, because the pawn was on the C file. C takes d3. And then black has this very, very powerful move, bishop to b4. So the idea is I just kind of got the knight off of that square, and I think very importantly removed the c2 pawn, because otherwise they would have been able to block with pawn to c3. Now I've got this check, and the king can't move to any of these squares either, because the queen is happily covering that second rank. So this is the only move that white can play. Obviously, you're like, wait a second, can't you just go bishop takes queen? Yes, yes, he can. But he's going to go queen takes queen, because that's going to be mate. And that's just going to be a little bit better. So again, I don't just jump at the first good move. You're like, oh, I just take it. Let's see, maybe there's something a little bit better. Maybe there's something else that I can do that's even an improvement on that. And in this case, queen takes d2. Mates white instantly. Okay, so guys, I hope that helped you a little bit. Again, I would go through these positions again and just have a look and see all the types of ideas and the types of things that you should be on the lookout for when finding yourselves in these sort of positions. Let's look at another one. Okay, so what have we got here? Again, we'll start in the same point. We'll say who's winning and by how much. We look at the pieces. I got 3 pieces. They got 3 pieces. Okay, cool. Queen for queen. Rook for, let's go rook for rook. Microphones off, please. Rook for rook. So it looks pretty even, actually. Let's count the pawns. 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6. 6 pawns each. We've got all the pieces. We got 3 pieces and 2 rooks and a queen each. Very, very close. Okay. But if you look at the attacking pieces, so you look at white's got this piece, this piece, this piece. Looks like there's some good go forward. The pieces are moving forward, causing a little bit of trouble. Whereas black's pieces, not so much. You can definitely feel like those pieces are all just sitting at the back doing very, very little. So nobody would fault you for going knight takes c6 here. Again, looking at all possible checks, all possible takes. That looks like a nice move. I might just play that move because that just seems like it might just be a free pawn, I guess. Knight takes. If knight takes, then I just go queen takes. Problem is I'm not really getting a great deal, but it looks juicy in any case. The queen is defending this rook, which often is a feature in these positions. You take with check, and then you sometimes are able to win the rook as well, which is very, very nice. So like, you know, maybe they block and then you just take the rook. And that's very, very nice. But now check, I mean, he blocks the check with bishop d7, and then you'll have to just move the queen away. Maybe queen d5. I like this move because I'm looking here, but it does feel like black does have some defensive resources. So again, following our previous world champions advice, we'll look for a better move. We'll have that one in the bank. That one's good. I mean, I can always use that one if I don't come up with anything better. But let's have a look and see. So there's a possible take. I do have to do something about this knight because obviously black is ready to just take that knight, which I'm not too excited about. So we'll have to do something about that. I mean, also, if you didn't like this, but it is a free pawn, so it has to be better than just simply coming back with a knight, which does seem like quite average. You want to look at this square as well. Always a vulnerability in the early stages of the game, but this knight on d8 does look like he's covering that f7 square. Like, I would love to have gone there, but the knight is covering. So then I actually see that there's a tactic. So there's such a concept called elimination of defense. And also overloading. So it's sort of a combination between those two things. So this knight is overloaded. He can't be in two places at the same time. Okay, so he needs to defend this square and he needs to defend this square. But he can't be in both places at the same time. So this starts to give us some ideas. You're like, well, maybe if I distract him, you know, then he has to go the one way and that will allow me to go the other way. And that's where the elimination of defense ties in, because we eliminate the defender. We're removing the defender. So if I play bishop f7 check, okay, so I check the king. King can't take because of the knight's defending. He can't move here because the knight covers that square. He is forced to go knight takes. Now, under normal circumstances, he's obviously very happy with that. It looks like he's just picked up a free bishop. Everything's cool. They're like, wait a minute, but okay, the knight's no longer defending this square, which was obviously our plan, okay? Because now we pick up the pawn with check. And that leaves black with two options. Either he has to play bishop d7 to block the check, or he can go king d8 to move the king out of the check. If you go bishop d7, white's simply just going to take it because he's realized that the knight also defends that square. So queen takes is delivering a nice mate, which is very, very nice. Alternatively, king d8. Now, if the king goes to d8, white has a very, very nice looking mate in one. Let's see who can find that mate in one. It's kind of like our mate in one training that we've done previously many times. Mate in one, white to play. Let's see who's got the goods. Mate in one, white to play. So look at all possible checks, all possible takes. How am I going to mate that king? I need to check him. Let's see if I can take anything. I just need to make sure that he's unable to escape the check. How can I do this? How can I do this? Tricky, tricky, tricky. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Not too bad, actually. There's sort of an obvious move. All right, I'll help you guys out on this last one. Maybe the brain's a little bit tired. Oh, maybe not. Knight takes f7. Very nice. So again, it's a takes. So we put in our little multiplication sign, our little times sign, our little x to say that we're taking something. So it'll be knight times, I'll write it in here, knight times f7. And then again, it will be mate. So we put our little hashtag in there. And that would be that. Let me just press into here. Knight takes f7, mate. Again, the king can't come here. The queen's got all of these squares covered, and the knight delivers the mate. All right. Very, very good. Guys, I'm going to leave it there for this week. Please, please, please use the next half an hour to try and practice a bit of chess. Like I've told you guys before, just simply go. I'll actually show you now again. Just click on leechess.org and then just go and probably choose the 15-minute time control. That's the one I've recommended previously. You guys need a bit of time to think. I don't want you rushing around or just trying to play quick moves just for the sake of. Remember, we're trying to play good chess moves. We're trying to play the best moves that we can come up with on every single move. That's what good chess is all about. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Please go through it again if you've got a little bit of spare time, and just make sure that the things you learned will actually stick into the brain. Just make sure that it's stuck there. Okay, remember, practice makes perfect, guys. So try and get in as much practice as you can. So just as a recap here, click on leadchess.org. This is the main menu that you'll always come to whenever you enter Leadchess. If you're not sure what to do, just click on there again. And then 15 plus 10. The plus 10 is increment. That means you get an extra 10 seconds every time you play a move. Not that that's going to make you know, a massive difference. But the 15 minutes is the time control I want you guys to play. Okay. Thank you very much for paying attention. Look after yourselves. Until next time. Bye-bye.